All right, guys. I want to do a real quick and dirty fractions review. And most people that hate math, it's when they got to fractions. And part of that was that there were a bunch of new rules and vocabulary and things like that. And truth be told, this is it, you've always done this, but so let's go over how to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions real quick. But first, let's start with a little review. And first of all, in fractions are parts of a whole in general. And so, for example, if I have a pizza and it's cut up into 4 slices, right? And I eat one of those slices, then I've eaten 1 out of 4 slices. And this bottom number, this is the denominator just for vocabulary. Always remember D for down. Numerator is up. It's got a U in it, so up. But the bottom number tells me how many pieces does it tell me, or how many do I need to get one whole thing. In other words, the bottom number tells me how big this slice is, how big the slices are, okay? So, for example, here I've got 2 out of 3, right? So I've eaten 2/3 out of a pizza. The 3 tells me how many pieces it takes to make one whole pizza, how big the slices are. Notice this number got smaller, the slices got bigger. Here I've got 1, 2, 3, I got 3/5, okay? Numerator is 3, the bottom is 5, but that 5 tells me how big those pieces are. And by the way, despite my drawings, you know that these slices are all the same size. For example, if I said, hey, we're going to go to lunch and we're going to split a pizza, and here's your half and here's my half, you know that this is not a half. You know that these pieces have to be the same size. So that's the basics of what fractions, what they're defined as. Numerators, denominators. The bottom number tells us how many slices, how big the slices are, okay? And it turns out that the easiest thing to do with fractions is to multiply them. So we're going to start out with a multiplication problem. And it's going to look something like this. So if I'm going to multiply fractions, the only thing that I do to multiply fractions is I multiply the tops. 2 times 4 is 8. And I multiply the bottoms. 3 times 5 is 15. And that's it. Simple as that. I multiply the tops, I multiply the bottoms. That's how you multiply fractions. So suppose let's do another example. Let's say, I'm going to say 2/3 times, let's say 5/6. Okay? So I multiply the tops. 2 times 5 is 10. 3 times 6 is 18. And that's my answer. Now I know some of you out there are going, but wait. Don't I have to reduce my fraction? And this is one of the places where a lot of times people lost it with fractions. And it's because of something called a convention. Think of a convention as, and this is something in math that we do a lot of, and we think that you saw it, but maybe you didn't see it. But a convention is something that we just agree to do. So, for example, this is my left hand. Why is that my left hand? Because we all agreed that that was going to be our left, this was going to be our right. That's what we agreed to. So a convention is an agreement. And in math, there's a lot of conventions. And one of those conventions is that we reduce the fraction. But here's what I want you to recognize. This 10/18 is the correct answer. Just because I don't reduce it doesn't change it. It's kind of like I've got 4 quarters in one hand and $1 in the other. That's a convention. I'm going to change all my quarters to dollars. Here I'm going to reduce all of my fractions, but understand this is the correct answer. Now I could, since it doesn't matter what order I multiply in, I could reverse these. Notice I just reversed the 3 and the 6. And 2 out of 6 would be the same as 1 out of 3. So now I can multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. There's my reduced answer. I can't reduce it any farther than that. This would be the conventional answer. So particularly on computer-based programs, if you do not reduce it, it's going to tell you that you're wrong and explain to you how to do it correctly. The one thing I want you to understand, though, is this is the correct answer. This is like 4 quarters. This is $1. Look the same, or they're the same value. They just look different. That right there is how you multiply fractions. Multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. That's it. The next easiest thing to do would be to divide fractions, it turns out. You're thinking, all this time you learned how to add and subtract first. When fractions, multiply and divide, those are the easy ones. And the way I divide fractions is I'm going to do a trick. And I want you to understand there's a reason that I can do this. This isn't just some kind of math magic, but it really isn't important that you understand how I do this or why I can do this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my first fraction, 2/3. I'm going to change the symbol to the divide, from divide to multiply. And I'm going to take the second fraction and flip it over. And now it's a multiplication problem. And we know how to multiply fractions. We multiply the tops. We multiply the bottoms. That is the correct answer. I guess I should reduce it. See, half of 10 is 5. Half of 12 is 6. Now I've reduced it. There's my reduced fraction. But long story short, to divide fractions, I'm going to keep this the same, change this, and flip that. So keep, change, and flip. Multiply straight across, and there's my answer. So that's how you divide fractions. Simple as that. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do this, flip it, and multiply. So now it's a multiplication problem. So now let's talk about add and subtract.